What's poppin' everybody, Sabro94. So as we know, DCE is one of the strongest special energies ever released, might even be the strongest if you consider this video. So today, I'm giving you guys the top 10 DCE exploiters and abusers. These are Pokemon that benefited amazingly from having DCE around, and wouldn't have had the level of dominance they did without it. The rules are going to be pretty simple. Cards will be judged on their respective format, how great of a package they make thanks to the contribution of DCE. The damage output, the effects, the speed that DC enables them to achieve, and what the final card package is. Now, thousands of Pokemon can make use of DCE in their attacks, and hundreds of them were part of competitive decks. But since this is a top 10, only the most busted of Pokemon will make it. Now, get ready to bow down. Number 10, Plasma Lugia EX. At first glance, this Pokemon doesn't seem like it would make a great DCE abuser or a very special Pokemon in general. Even if you slap 2 DCs on Lugia, a 4 energy attack is pretty big, and the damage is average at best. Solid stats for an EX Pokemon, but that's nothing special either. This Pokemon, however, is actually very special. With Overflow, this Pokemon will take an additional prize card every time it knocks out a Pokemon out. A very rare and strong ability indeed, as now knocking out a regular Pokemon is like knocking out an EX, giving you 2 prizes, and if you knock out an EX, you get 3, essentially giving you the ability to win by knocking 2 EX Pokemon with this card. Since this is a Plasma Pokemon, for some reason since it's Lugia, it benefits from the versatile and strong Plasma support cards. With Colorless Machine, you can instantly power up Lugia out of the blue, and with Deoxys EX and a Muscle Band, this Pokemon could get one-hit KOs, even on EX Pokemon. Now it still needs a lot of resources, and that's why it's at number 10, but the combo is still incredibly powerful, and becomes possible thanks to DCE covering the remaining energy cost. Number 9, Flygon Level X. The Flygon duo from Rise and Rivals was already incredible, and would only get even more intense with the release of DCE in Heart Gold Soul Silver, as now the Flygons could launch their intense attacks for only 2 attachments. Flygon Level X especially, being able to snipe for an astounding 150 damage on Level X Pokemon was too amazing for only 2 attachments. Since not all of the best decks used Level X Pokemon back then, I can't justify placing it higher, but DCE definitely makes a night and day difference to the power of this deck. Number 8, the Outrage Dragons from Black and White. The Flail Rage combo has been around since the beginning of Pokemon, and with cards like Memory Berry, multiple evolved Pokemon could make effective use of it, but with the release of the Black and White base set, the concept will be elevated on a whole new level of brokenness. Having such a strong and cheap Outrage attack on basic Pokemon with such high HP, the highest at the time, was unheard of, and could understandably deemed very unfair. Allowing these dragons to do very high damage for 1 DCE on any Pokemon if they didn't get knocked out in one hit. Reshiram and Zekrom were the original debuters, but Kyurem got released very shortly with the same Outrage attack, and since then the attack has been remade and made even stronger on EX and GX Pokemon like Kyurem EX and Tauros GX. Still, you gotta remember, the attack is all that easier thanks to DCE being around. Number 7, Mewtwo EX. If there's one Pokemon that defines the most fucked up days of the Black and White era, was the release of Mewtwo EX, a Pokemon definitely taking advantage of DCE to make an impact for years. Being responsible for the shitty Mewtwo wars, for me, Mewtwo's real value of strength came from it being able to make a great Psychic Tech attacker for as long as it was around, with a simple attack possible by just a DCE that could be built up to be an unstoppable game ender. It's a card that you always had to be mindful of in that era, especially if you had Psychic weak Pokemon on your side. In a way, it almost seems weird that this card is at number 7, but it just goes to show you how much more busted the following DCE abusers are. Number 6, Joltik. This little fucker right here. Joltik is obviously here as being able to dish out the highest, cheapest, and fastest damage output for just 1 DCE if you get the right opening hand in Night March decks. In fact, Night March is one of the very few decks in recent years that would opt to play second depending on the build and player to apply all the damage as quickly as turn 1. Of course, I'm aware of other similar Pokemon like Vespiquen and Flareon, but when it comes to these battle compressor fast cheap damage decks, I think Joltik is rightfully the trademark Pokemon here, being the smallest little fucker that can attack for over 200 damage for a single DCE. It should look and sound insane, but this little fucker is one of the deadliest, most dangerous abusers of DCE. Number 5, Gardevoir and Gallade. You know a bunch of Pokemon exploit a card when they make a big comeback in the meta due to that card. The famous Secret Wonders duo of Gardevoir and Gallade were a top deck in the earlier days of the DP format, but would eventually become not as favored when newer threats that were faster appeared. Come forth the release of DCE in the Heart Gold Soul Silver base set, and the duo was back in business kicking serious ass. A testament to how strong these Pokemon were for their time. Gallade had the ability to dish out the unbelievable 180 damage for 2 energy attachments if DCE was involved, a number that would be considered ideal years after in the Black and White era to get one-hit KOs on giant EX Pokemon. By the same token, Gardevoir could perform one of the strongest power locks that were completely impossible to get around back then, since it was the effect of its attack. A great additional asset and a Pokemon with a fantastic ability in the first place. You want to talk about abusing the benefits of DCE? These Pokemon got you covered. Number 4. Erica's Jigglypuff. Besides the most old of old school motherfuckers, probably most of you don't even know why a card you never heard of before is in such a high spot on this list. But believe me, this card is easily a deadlier abuser of DC than many of these cards on this list combined. In a wizard format where hand rape was at its finest, its fucking worst is what I mean, a Pokemon that could do 40 for a DCE before plus powers and other add-ons was hell. This Pokemon is the epitome of losing before you actually get a single turn, and losing to a smiling pink balloon that's a running gag in the anime makes you look even more like a jackass. Got nothing on Jigglypuff as a Pokemon, but fuck the design of this card. Now for the worst of the top dogs. Number 3. Seismitoad EX. The first of the worst 3, Seismitoad EX is a Pokemon most of you aren't surprised to see so high, and it is undoubtedly one of the worst DCE abusers. Locking effects through attacks are powerful, because there are almost no ways to get around them. About the only card I can think of that could remove the effect was Pokemon Ranger. Now, getting an item lock attack through just a single DCE? Fuck me. Seismitoad EX Quaking Punch attack is based on Manectric EX, a top competitive Pokemon in its own day, functioning just like Seismitoad EX, building a deck on the premise of such an attack, and aiming to lock the opposing player throughout the whole game. The freaking difference though is Seismitoad is a damn basic Pokemon, and can perform the attack for just one attachment, much easier and much faster than Manectric, that needed 1 lightning energy minimum. This Pokemon has been the face of item lock throughout the X and Y era, and even still has a presence in Expanded as a reliable, annoying, fucked up lock deck. A deck favored by the most accomplished player, Jason Kaczynski, during its most dominant days. It's not easy to top a more abusive DCE attack than this. Of course, you can only imagine what kind of fuckers the last 2 guys are. Number 2. Zoroark GX. What makes Zoroark GX such an unapologetic, I'd say shameful abuser of DCE, is the whole package you get with this card. An ability that lets you draw cards in a Pokemon is the stuff of dreams for any card. But combine this with a stage 1 Pokemon and 2 broken attacks, and you have yourself one of the most superior designed Pokemon cards ever made. There is barely any flaw on this card. With a full bench you can do 120 damage, not bad for just a DC attachment. But it gets even worse when you realize its bigger output potential when combined with Skyfield and Expanded. Thanks to this card and a choice band, Zoroark GX can deal exactly enough damage to get one-hit KOs on the most popular, powerful GX and EX Pokemon for 1 energy. Where have we come when one-hit KOs on EX and GX Pokemon can be made with a single energy? Putting all these aspects together, Zoroark GX has been the king of Expanded since its release, and unless they print a similar Pokemon around, it will probably be like this for more years to come. Number 1. Garchomp C-Level X. And here we are. I present to you the Pokemon that owns DCE as its own card. DCE is like a Garchomp C-Level X's sword. That's how masterful this Pokemon's unfair use of this card was during its era. Like Zoroark GX, Garchomp C-Level X is a perfect package that can exploit DEC at its most unfair with such easy conditions you wouldn't even call them that. Thanks to its power, this Pokemon was essentially a max potion on all your SP Pokemon without even the drawbacks of max potion, and at the same time was the most flexible and strongest hitter for 1 energy, the fucking DC of course in this case. 80 damage for 1 energy in that era is an absolute explosion on your opponent's field, but it gets better as this attack is a snipe. Yeah, you heard me, you can actually hit any Pokemon in your opponent's field. Not only is this a more sophisticated flexible attack compared to Zoroark GX, Garchomp accomplished it with much fewer resources than what Zoroark needs, especially considering Zoroark takes advantage of necessary expanded cards to be at its worst. That's not even going into all of the excellent SP exclusive cards it could utilize, being an SP Pokemon. No matter how I look at it, there's really no comparison. This colorless dragon Pokemon had such an extraordinary impact when it could use DCE, which is why I deem this fucking lovable and hateable Garchomp C-Level X as the strongest and biggest exploiter and abuser of DCE. Alright, another cool video is done. I hope you guys enjoyed and found this informative and entertaining. My channel is an excellent hub for all things TCG, both retro and contemporary, and I urge you guys to subscribe, like and share this video with other TCG players. Thank you guys for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Sebro94, what's up?